Okay, welcome to this week's episode of KUDEN Radio, the podcast for serious warrior protectors. I'm serious. Are you serious? I was so serious that typed in a different name for James earlier. Anyway, all right. So this episode, this whole week, we are diving into the concept of Kihon. You know, those basics that everybody thinks that they know. Yeah. So I think everybody knows by now, if you've been following along for a while, that I wouldn't be covering it if it were that simple. So actually, tonight I want to share a perspective that may make you, I'm hoping, hint, hint, nudge, nudge, headbutt to the face, that may make you question everything that you've been told about quote unquote basics. But Hatsumi Sensei uses the term basics. Oh, the other master teachers and the new Soke use the term basics. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Okay. They also use numbers above 10th Dan to represent or to discuss black belt ranks. 11th Dan, 12th Dan, 15th Dan. Okay. Why would they do that? Well, because it's an expedient. It's what Westerners keep using. And since the majority of students going to Hombu are Western, and that's the vocabulary, I think that, like many of us, long ago, they got tired of repeating themselves. So, or as Hatsumi Sensei so adamantly passed through one of the Daishihan Seno Sensei before he passed away, one of my last visits to Japan, before that happened, that it's not their responsibility to teach us Japanese culture. We're going there. We're learning a Japanese martial art. There's things that we should probably study and learn. So anyway, Kihon is the thing, right? And so what I want to start with is, well, maybe just it's a personal story about growing up, right? And at a certain point, maybe it's just, I don't know, maybe it's just the way my brain is wired. I came to question what I realized nobody else was questioning, right? And that is what mom and dad told me were true, what my grandparents told me were true, what teachers told me were true. What I questioned was who told them, and then who told them, and did anybody bother to question or to validate the information, or because the position of the person who was passing the lesson on, right, must know more than me, or they just told me it was true, and because I believe them, then therefore I believe anything that they tell me. Well, anyway, I'll finish this after we get started, but what I want to go into is how this ties into how we approach things that are called basics, especially as beginners, and how what a 5th Dan or a 10th Dan or a Daishihan or a Soke calls basics, they're not the same as what a Shodan or a mid-Q or a white belt calls basics. Okay. I have this quote from Hatsumi Sensei that the basics are not the beginner's level. The basics are everything. Okay. So we'll talk about that and more, of course, when we get back. So the big question is this: how are self-defense and success-minded people like us, concerned citizens worried about protecting ourselves, our loved ones, and the things we care about from the monsters we know exist in the world? How do we train in a way that gives us the skills, knowledge, and understanding we need without becoming paranoid fighters or killers ourselves, and yet still allows us to be the hero protector the world needs us to be? That's the question, and this podcast will give you the answers. My name is Jeffrey Miller, and welcome to KUDEN Radio. All right, so this shirt might make people think that I'm a huge Star Wars fan. Star Wars is okay. I know that's blasphemy for some of you guys that just can't wait for May 4th to come up. But yeah, my wife didn't get me the shirt, or maybe I bought the shirt. I don't know. Because of Star Wars. Right? It's supposed to be about all of us. Okay. Otherwise, we're average. Anyway, so welcome. I've got James in the wings, or he is my wingman. James, who do we have? The numbers are coming in. They're going up, and I don't know. They stabilize. I think some people sign on sometimes because they expect to see some kind of like, I don't know, demonstration or performing monkey or whatever. And because this is not, guys, this is not the popular side of training, right? This is not the preferred method. Everybody really, I was going to say wants, but they needed to be just a martial art, just another martial arts choice among martial arts choices. Most of them stop there. Most of them find that, right? Because as we define anything, that it's not a bad thing, right? We set our sights on that, and it gives us something to aim for. Because Zig Ziglar, one of the mentors I used to follow quite a bit, said many times over that if you aim for nothing, you'll hit it every time. Okay? So be careful not having any goals. But everything is an omyo. Everything is an inyo, right? A yin yang balance kind of thing. Okay, just like either I or the attacker, right? Can't throw anything out to attack that person to hit some part of their body without sacrificing that very thing, right? We just have to hope that we're, right, and this, I'm speaking for most people, right? I have to hope that I'm fast enough, tricky enough, slick enough, whatever, that he doesn't catch me, right? But the attacking fist is only a weapon so long as it's lined up with a target and it's problematic for the defender, and they have to spend time dealing with it and not with my targets. Otherwise, if they shift, right, if their perception is what it should be or could be at higher levels, then if it's not lined up with a target, or I've shifted, right, and it's going to miss that whole time that it's busy missing, it's not a weapon anymore. It's a target. Okay. It's going to be something we're covering during spring camp coming up. Part of the topics I'm covering is yari. And a lot of people have an issue with that because they know my focus is usually real world self-defense. And what the hell does a spear have to do with real world self-defense? Other than, you might find something really, really long that you have to, yeah. Okay. Right. You're at least in the ballpark with that. But how the hell did somebody who had an average height of 4'2", that was the average height of a warrior during the Sengoku Jidai Warring States period. So I'm 5'6" and change, which makes me a veritable fucking giant for that time period, right? I was on the tall side of things, right? 4'2". We're talking about the average height of James, a 9-year-old, 10-year-old, something like that, give or take. Okay. And a spear is 7 to 13 feet long, depending on the spear, right? So how the hell do you not only maneuver this thing? I can't get people that are 6 feet tall to not tag the ground with a long staff, right? or hit themselves or whatever, right? So, but how do you not only maneuver something that much longer than your body, but how do you do it in a way that you can trick the other person, that you can get it into place fast enough, or you can change directions quickly enough and whatnot to catch them, to throw them off, right? And that's the point, right? So we're going to be covering Kihon because most people haven't touched a spear that are coming to camp, but spear for me in my curriculum is farther down the line because somebody has to have a decent level of proficiency with a long staff and with a sword, because a spear is a compound weapon, right? It's a combination weapon. Right? There are balance issues. There are like center of balance issues and things like that, right? There's a problem transitioning from long staff, because with a long staff, both ends are working ends. Both ends. And it's not like with a spear, both ends aren't working ends, but with staff, both ends are blunt force trauma weapons. Yeah. But with a spear or a naginata, a halberd, right, you have a cutting end and a blunt force staff end, given that you don't have any uh, extra accoutrements added to it. But either way, it's still going to be blunt force, right? So now, how does that affect your bow furigata, right? Your staff turning. Because if you do it just the same way you do turn a staff, what do you have? You always have the cutting side coming to bear on him. Um, let's say it's my right side. So my left side will always be blunt force trauma. My right side will always be cutting. My left side. You get the idea, right? So how do we do that? But the reason I'm covering it, besides the cool factor, and besides it will drastically and dramatically uncover taijutsu problems, it's to learn some of these principles and concepts that are supposed to be then integrated into shorter weapons and into our taijutsu to be complete game changers. Okay? Because this is this huge thing, right? And if I can do it with that, then how much better would my hanbo, my sword, my knife, my unarmed, how much better would that be if right? So anyway, all right. Before we jump into this whole thing, James, who do we have? Who else brought the force?
We got Jared, Trinity, Maui, Dave, and Paula Miller said good evening.
Paula. Paula's a former family member. She's still a family member. She'll always be my sister-in-law. I hate titles. Anyway. All right. So
Terrence just popped in too.
Who?
Terrence.
Oh, well, just block him. Just kidding, Terrence. Relax. Anyway, I did want to send out a quick apology for anybody that missed the email the other day. Somebody decided they were going to, I don't know how they got my business card information, but they did, and bought something in some e-store in Tokyo. You have no idea how much I wish that was me, but it was not. However, my bank's fraud department caught it right away. It was for less than $18, but they caught it. And once I confirmed it, well, then everything got blocked. So wouldn't normally be a problem other than all these services that I have wired to the business card. Luckily, I had a backup card that I could work things around, but not in time. Because what ended up happening, some of you guys did not get some of the emails and whatnot on time, because my email service, coincidentally, that same day or just like a couple of hours after this little fiasco, tried to bill for services, and apparently they don't have a grace period or a waiting period or whatever. And if they did, well, they didn't the day that I needed to pay, and so they unscheduled a couple of emails that should have gone out. So my inner circle guys didn't get their emails for the Friday class and all kinds of crap going on. So anyway, I'm adapting and handling that on this end. But if you've ever experienced that, it's an inconvenience in your personal life. But when things are tied to things on a business level, so now I have to wait till the new card comes in and then run around and, well, actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to wait till things break, right? I'm going to fix the ones that are top of mind. And then when charges are, I get a reminder email or whatever, then I'll jump in and fix other ones. Otherwise, I could eat up all my time. So anyway, cool. Are we good? So Terrence was the last one in the door. All right. I'd say lock the door, but we're on a podcast. So
And
anyway.
Jimmy just dropped his konbanwa.
Konbanwa. Jimmy must be in the same time zone as I am, because some folks that are on, they're definitely konnichiwa, and other ones are definitely ohayou gozaimasu. So anyway, all right. So most of you know by now, if you're regulars, if you're new to this, then maybe not. But for those of you who are regulars, you know that a while back, I didn't change the format of KUDEN or what I'm doing or anything like that. What I did was I changed my planning to kind of streamline things and to give everybody who wants to take advantage of things a week instead of an hour or 3 to learn these concepts, right? And so KUDEN, right, the podcast kind of is the jumping off point, since this is Monday, right? So it's the jumping off point for the theme for the week. And then since this is much more high level, I'll be talking about physical skills, but not specific. Well, there might be some specific skills. Anyway, but this is typically, if we think about the 3 aspects that Hatsumi Sensei has identified as the 3 aspects of a ninja, right? Niwo Shinobu, the body capable of enduring; Kokoro Shinobu, the mind capable of enduring; and Shiko Shinobu, the perspective, the belief system, the insight, those kind of things, right? It's our core, right? And I understand the capable of enduring thing, but it really points to 3 different areas for training, right? And I know people like to say mind, body, spirit, except it's not really that. It's not exactly that kind of thing, because in the East they don't think of things in terms of mind and spirit, right? So when we say Shin, heart, or we say Kokoro, mind, it's really hard to split the difference. So it's not just spirit. Okay, that's for a whole other show. But anyway, so this is the big overview and how it relates across at least 2, if not all 3 of them. Today will be one of those rare exceptions where we talk about all 3. And then Whiteboard Wednesday, that's our strategy and tactics prelude, right, to the actual physical component during the live training, during the master classes in the inner circle and the Shinobi Kai classes. So we've got one on Tuesday, one on Friday. So those of you in the Ninpo Master Class or higher, what's now called Ninpo Mastery or Ninpo Elite, you guys are going to get two rounds of this thing where we're focusing on Kihon or whatever the topic is. But so we're coming at this from a high level Kotsu essential nature perspective that works in the dojo, works on the battlefield, works in life, all kinds of aspects, right? Because principles are universal, right? And then Whiteboard Wednesday gives us a chance to look at the why of things, right? Where we're now coming in on the battlefield and the training paradigm and whatnot, right? So it's the strategic thinking, it's the strategy, it's the tactical application that makes the mechanics easier, right? Makes them easier. And then the classes are where those who are in the class. I can't say, I'm not going to say just the people in the class, because some of my best students that are virtual suit up and show up for class, even though they're on Zoom. At least one of my guys, I don't know about you guys, but at least one of my guys, he works in security and often can't make it for the live classes. And we had a conversation here recently, and he said even when he watches the replay of the physical classes, okay, he suits up. He still puts his uniform on, because it's a whole mind experience kind of thing. He's in class. Doesn't matter that it's a video. He's in class, right? And that's cool, right? I used to, more often than not, put my uniform on, or at least a training T-shirt. As a matter of fact, I just did a training tool to go along with the official student T-shirt that we have, to allow students to see that T-shirt, right, as something more than just a piece of clothing with a logo on it. Right, it's 5 different ways to use it as a tool to increase and improve our training. Right. And I can't remember if one of those is to see it as armor, or if that was just something I was going to discuss in passing. Okay. Anyway, it's a huge principle within Nikyo. Anyway, all right. So I don't want to keep jumping around on these things. But anyway, the theme for this week is Kihon. And so Kihon is very, very often just translated as basics. And again, the senior teachers, Hatsumi Sensei, other Soke, use this as an expedient. But if anybody's ever seen the movie The Princess Bride, right? I'm surrounded by women in my family, so I've seen it many times. One of my favorite lines in that movie is, "I don't think that word means what you think it means." And this is important, right? Several of my teachers, including my Mikyo teacher, when we were discussing things, often they would stop and define it as we are discussing it, or that we need to think about it within the context of this given class. I don't mean this episode, but we would stop and make sure that everybody was translating this particular word, whatever that word may be, in this case, basics, right? So that we all had the same level of understanding, or could work to the same level of understanding. Because if we don't do that, the teacher is leaving it up to the student's knowledge, the student's habits, the student's vocabulary, and the student's life experience to define that word any damn way they want. And therein lies a gate for a shit ton of confusion. And when it comes to, this stuff is hard enough for modern Japanese to get their head wrapped around, because modern Japanese don't see the same words or the same kanji the same way as they were seen hundreds, if not 1,000 or 2,000 years ago, right? So if a native speaker can't get their head wrapped around it, or has to get reoriented and whatnot, how can anybody think? And I used to do this, right? So there's an edge of embarrassment whenever I think about this, but it's natural, right? But how can anybody think who's not Japanese, right, that they're just going to be able to translate a word, or jump to a Berlitz course, or a oversimplified, or do a chat GPT, or what does this word mean? And you get this like 1 or 2 word answer, when it's not so easy. Okay. So for those of you who were on during the intro, before I ran the intro video to officially start the episode, you caught part of this, but I'm gonna reiterate it. I'm gonna repeat it for those who were not here. Okay. And what I mentioned was, at a certain point in my own growth, right? And maybe I was just wired for an art like this, but I really started questioning answers. Okay. Like, if a teacher said, "Where'd you learn that?" Okay. Well, I learned it from so-and-so. Okay. Well, who taught you that? I'm going to step on some toes here throughout the night. I know I am, but that's okay. Right. Who told you that God exists? Who told you that, 2 + 2 = 4, or whatever, right? Could have been mom and dad, could have been grandma and grandpa, could have been a teacher, whatever. Okay, great. Okay. Who told them? Okay. Who told them? Just keep going back. Okay. Now, at any point, okay, did any of them validate the information? Did any of them do any work beyond accepting that that was true? Okay. Like I've had teachers in this art, right? We do Seigan no Kamae. We all know what Seigan or Ichimonji looks like, right? Okay. Rear hand is up here by the neck. Whatever, right? Does anybody have a teacher walk up and go, why's your hand right there? Okay. And then like you had to give a reason. Because I had one that came up and asked that question and then said, if you say it's because it's the way it's done, I'm going to punch you. Right? Because if you don't know why that hand is there, or you only have a reason or two or three that hand is there, then that's your limitation. Right? You can't go beyond that. Or you're only doing it because it's the official way, right? Which means you can't use it. Okay? Unless a kata comes up and it's a big revelation. Holy shit, look at that. I can swat an incoming arm as I'm going to Kamae with that before I deliver an uke-uchi. No shit. Yeah. Okay. But who before us? Who before me? This was my journey, right? Who before me validated the information to make sure that it was right before they played telephone and repeated it to me? And what I found out was that nobody did. It's just what people told everybody because, well, everybody knows that, man. It's just common sense. Okay, so is common sense common because it's true, or is it common because that's the belief system everybody is introduced into, and then that's how things go? Now, I'm not splitting hairs here. I'm not getting into this because there are uses for things like this as expedients, culturally, socially, those kind of things. Otherwise, shit just falls apart. Okay. And for all the anarchists out there, I understand the thinking of, tear it all down and shit like that. But I've met my fair share of anarchists and antisocial personality disorders and, people that just aren't going along with the status quo and well, that's a part of that thinking. I'm just not going to do. Okay. I truly do believe that if they did tear everything down and the structure was set up the way they currently are describing how it should be, they would be anti that as well, because they're not they're not against the thing. They're just anti. They have a what do they call that? The hell's that called, James? A contrarian personality, right? Where whatever you say, they're just going to say the opposite, right? Or they just want to be they want to be able to do whatever they want to be able to do, but they want to have rules in place so that everybody else follows their script. Okay, so this art has taught me much, right? Beyond how to duck a punch, because that punch could be words, it could be an idea, it could be an oppressive or a psychological manipulator at work, those kind of things, right? Harm is harm, threat is threat, damage is damage. Okay. Anyway, so I find that, and again, this is Jeff's journey. This is Daishian Miller's journey, whatever you want to call it, right? That it is very, very helpful if I go back and I go beyond the simple translation of, okay, because Kihon, right? Basics, Kihon, fundamental, Kihon, okay. Kihon is made up of 2 kanji, okay? So I go beyond that, right? What does each kanji mean? It's kind of like Shihan, okay, as a title, right? In Japan, one would never call themselves a Shihan, okay? I know conventionally, even in Japan, it means master teacher, okay? But if you look at the kanji that make up the word for Shihan, they're the kanji for role model. So calling yourself a Shihan, see where I'm going with this? Okay. Um, there's a lot of little nuances like that, right? Anyway, but I started to look at the kanji. Okay, so what do the kanji themselves mean? And sometimes, right, it comes together, and okay, that makes sense, right? And other times, they don't seem to link, or they seem to say the same thing twice. Well, shit, right? Okay, so since kanji are pictographs, okay, kanji got their start as ways to draw out, as in draw, right? Draw, etch on rock, whatever, right? Um, People, places, things, actions, right? Those kind of things. Um, then what's behind the way the kanji was built? What is it? What is it a picture of? What is it depicting? Right. And that opens up a whole new gateway. Okay? Hatsumi Sensei teaches and taught on this kind of thing a lot. And these were always the kind of things that made me kind of go right into like thinking mode, or if I didn't have time for that because we were in the dojo in Japan or whatever, right? Quick note, right? Explore this, right? Fill in the blank. To see how far it would go. And for those of you who follow Whiteboard Wednesday, I do that a lot. And we do that tonight with Kihon. Okay. So in my own sloppy kanji handwriting, right, I wrote it out. So those of you who are on audio only, it's okay. Simple Google search, Google Images, or I don't know, just ask ChatGPT, I guess, right? What are the kanji to use to write the martial arts word for Kihon, right? And it'll show you, okay? But we're going to break this down a little bit, okay? Because this points way deeper, and this is one of those things that I could have called this episode the Kihon of Kihon, because there's an interesting connection between these two kanji that I can find in Mikyo. I can find between the mandala. I can find in Taoism with the yin and yang, inyo is how it's said in Japanese. This whole onmyo do balancing kind of thing, that if you have more of one side than you have of the other, you still have weakness. Both are needed for strength. Both are needed for power. Both are needed for what has been is and has been pointed to in the training and the lessons. I'm going to close my office door here because my wife just got home. All right. Not because I'm locking the wife out, but because the dogs are going to go bananas and go running to her and all that stuff. So anyway, all right. So let's do this. Let me bring up my notes so I don't inadvertently miss something. Okay. So again, for those of you who were not on the intro, right? A little quote from Hatsumi Sensei, just in case you think I'm making this shit up, right? The basics are not the beginner's level. The basics are everything. Okay. And therein lies a problem with translating Kihon as basics, because more often than not, to most people, if you use the word basics, what you're saying is, oh, this is beginner stuff. Okay. This is the basic level. Well, we'll talk about what it means after we get through this, but I got quite a bit here, and that not just for the kanji, how this moves into other lessons from Hatsumi Sensei, and how, and we're only going to relate to maybe three actual techniques or skills or things that are physical in nature, okay? Because of the nature of this. Okay. So Kihon, I'll hold this up one more time, right? So hopefully, James, I have my notes up in front of me. Is that in the screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so the top one, he, right? He, and the bottom one is hon. Okay, hon. Okay, so hon, by the way, can also mean book. Same picture. Um, but it's not about a book. It's what the book represents and gives us. Okay. So anyway, what does this word kihon really mean? Okay. So let's break down the kanji. Right. Ki, the first kanji, can be translated as foundation. Okay. Foundation. Uh, like like the earth or like a building's foundation. Okay. So the condition of it, the condition of the foundation upon which we build anything, right? No matter how well we construct that thing that we're building on top of it, right, is ultimately subject to that foundation. Okay. Foundation is a swamp. Well, good luck, right? If it shifts, if we're building on a earthquake fault line, all that stuff, right? Okay. And then hon, boy, hon can go really deep. Hon can mean root, it can mean truth, it can mean main, it can mean principle, as in the core of something, right? Points to truth, whole bunch of things. Okay. So uh, I get it if some folks aren't wanting things at this level. I get it, right? But I think I mentioned this, was it last episode, or I don't know, wrote a bunch of stuff on this stuff here recently, that um, I'm done um, teaching dabblers. Right, dabblers are going to do what they do. They're going to hop on. They're going to, as long as it's interesting and it's shiny and it makes noise and it moves and it's what they think is beneficial to them in the moment. Right, it's the cool ride at the amusement park. Okay, then they'll stay around or they'll pick and choose or whatever. Okay. Um, it is my responsibility as a Daishihan to faithfully pass this stuff on to create the next generation of masters, not the next generation of martial artists or the next generation of practitioners and the next generation of karate guys calling themselves ninja or whatever. Right? It's not. Okay. So the stuff I'm going to be discussing here is not, this is not beginner fluff. This is not. Well, that's an interesting little conversation, Sensei. No, what we're going to be discussing here is the genetic code of the art. Okay, it's the DNA. Okay, Hatsumi Sensei has said students move on too soon. Right, they want the next technique, but they haven't truly understood the first one. Okay? This is not about kata collecting. This is not about how many we know. It's about how deep we've gone or how broad we've gone with things with any given technique, and especially with those that are identified as Kihon, Kihon no Kihon, or Kihon Gata. Okay, there's something about them that is critically important. Okay, that we keep coming back to them as we go up the levels. Okay, so while I may still be doing Ichimonji no kata or Ichimonji gata as a Daishihan, the basics that I see, the Kihon no Kihon that I see in of that model are not the same ones that I saw when I was a white belt or a Shodan or a Godan. They're not. Okay. But things like this, because they look simple, right? Like Ichimonji no kata, right? You learn Ichimonji no Kamae. Well, what the hell does that mean? Because it's certainly not just the shape. Right? We'll talk about that here in a bit. Okay. Then we learn Ichimonji no kata. Well, that looks pretty simple. He throws a punch, I block it, and then I chop him in the neck and I send him on his way, and he rolls, or we laugh and have a good time. And okay, what if Ichimonji no kata was an ideal? What if Ichimonji no kata was like a delivery truck bringing something you bought at a store to your house, right? What if it's not the lesson? What if it's like a delivery truck carrying all the lessons? What are those lessons? Anyway, back to Kihon. So, quick thing here again, for those of you who are on audio only, I'm holding this thing up. This my best sloppy Japanese writing at the moment. Holding this up, you can just again do a Google search, Google Images, whatever, to get the kanji themselves. But I'm directing everybody to this. The top one here is ki, right? For Kihon, right? Foundation. But what I want you to do is get past all this upper part here, and I want you to look at this. What looks like, I don't know what the hell does it look like. Looks like a upside down F, maybe, right? You've got this horizontal stroke, vertical stroke, and then this base at the bottom. Okay. This is the kanji, the radical, right? Kanji made up of the radicals that kind of point at a specific or a base part of the meaning, right? This kanji is also the one that you see often when we're looking at the gogyo or the Chinese 5 elements. Okay, sometimes you see the full the full one that we use for chi, but this is do, and sometimes it's tsuchi, I think, right? But either way, this is the earth. Okay, so this is the foundation, right? The rest of this, right, is a construct. What I mean by a construct is it's something that's being built. Right? Originally, it was a basket being woven, okay, and it was going to be sat on the ground. Okay, well, if you set it on the ground, like a basket by its very nature is supposed to hold something, right? It's supposed to do something. So if I set this on something that's slanted or it's unsafe or uneven or it's wet or whatever, right? Kind of mess up the shit that's on the inside, or just the basket will just spill, just fall over, right? So, but in today's world, it's not necessarily a basket, but everything from these little angled supports, right, all the way up to this construct up here. Okay, this is what's being built on the earth, okay, on the ground, on the foundation. Okay, so this is this is really pointing to a two-part kind of thing, right? It is. I'm going to try to keep this short for tonight, right? Because I have a couple of articles in the works for these things and whatnot that'll help anybody that wants to go deeper, and for everybody else, it'll just be something else that gets avoided for the next technique, the next cool trick, the next variation. Okay, and I know if I sound harsh, I'm also talking to a former me, so don't think that you're anything special, right? I'm knocking myself as well. Okay. But if we don't get grabbed and shaken up, ego will just decide he's going to drive the train. Right. And there's nothing quite like a student who decides which lessons that the teacher passes on are worth them bothering to learn. Okay. Because if they know so much, then I don't know why they'd go to the teacher unless what they're building up is ego and not ability. Okay. So this is one part of it. Okay. So this is, well, we'll talk about what that is in a minute. Okay. So the foundation, what this entire kanji is pointing to is that this construct, whatever's being built, okay, one, it needs to be built in a solid way, right? The construction needs to be correct. Okay. We get that. But it's highly dependent upon the foundation, the base. Okay. What is that? Okay. So this kanji for hon, right? Part of this, right? Most of this is the kanji ki. okay, as well, right, which is tree. Okay, so let me shift here a little bit, right? So if we take away this stroke right here, this ichi, right, ichi, what we have left, horizontal drop, these two supports here, this is ki, tree. Okay, part of my martial name, Mori no Tora. Mori is three of these. There's two down here and one on top, right? Which means forest. Okay. But they don't have this. Okay. This, right? In some instances, if you see this, this gets translated as wood. Right? Again, you have to know the reference. Okay. So with this here, we also have wood because now what we have is a cut tree, but that's not the translation this time. This is the ground. Okay. And what this whole thing is pointing to and referencing right here, it's not just the ground like this up here, it's this part, the roots of the tree, right? The strength of the roots of the tree, the strength and the health and whatnot is what determines the strength and the health of the entire tree. Okay. So again, Hon, principle, main, core, it's all kinds of things to this, right? What this is pointing to is the strength of the thing being built. Okay. So if we look at Kihon, what we're looking at is two sides of the same coin. We're looking at the inyo of things. Okay. Ki is the foundation that we're building on. Hon are the principles that are guiding our training, our activities, our practice. Okay. Hon also means truth. Okay. So for those of you going through training with me through Mikyo, this is the Kongokai, right? The Hon kanji, and this is the Taizokai. Okay. This is the material. This is the activities being done. These are the universal principles that we're working with, right? We didn't make up our own freaking ideas. Okay. So again, we could go way deeper, but Kihon ultimately points to two things. One, if I don't know the principles and concepts, the truths of the art, the science that makes things work, then whatever techniques, no matter how good I am with them, they're going to collapse when pressure's applied, when things aren't going the way, based on the safety mechanisms in the dojo. Okay. That includes, now, could somebody win a fight? Of course they can. Okay. But if taijutsu starts to fall away as pressure's applied and we end up fighting like everybody else, then what's the fucking point? Why are we bothering with taijutsu? Right? If we're just going to do whatever works, I understand that's a good ninjutsu principle as well, but don't call it taijutsu. Don't call it ninpo taijutsu. Right? Just because it works, or just because it was good enough, or it sufficed, or whatever, doesn't mean that we followed the principles that produce that thing. Right? And key is it's the what we're building. Okay, it's the techniques, it's the understand. Let me go back. Hon is being in alignment with the principles and concepts, right? The core, the essential nature of the art, right? If you're doing Budo Taijutsu, you're doing one thing. If you're doing Ninpo Taijutsu, there's a lot of crossover, but they're not the same. There's a reason I use the term Ninpo Taijutsu way, way more than I use Budo Taijutsu. Okay? Budo, martial ways. Right? Budo Taijutsu, body skills for what? Budo, martial, fighting. Ninpo Taijutsu, Ninpo, way of enduring, way of surviving, way of overcoming. Taijutsu, body skills. Okay? So Ninpo Taijutsu includes Budo Taijutsu, but way more. Dog attacks, going off a cliff in a car, okay, surviving a relationship, break up, financial setback, all kinds of things. Okay, so one, Hon represents the correct principles and concepts, understanding the correct principles and concepts, so that we know what we're aiming for, what is supposed to be driving, what the fuel is. Ki, the construct, is the way we practice, the reason we practice the way we do, the why, right? How we do it, the reason that we do drills as often or more often than we do technique, or exploring why the hand is here, right? I mean, if I build a building and I've got an extra freaking an extra upright or whatever, I need to know, right? Is that decorative? Is that something that I can, remove if I'm going to do modifications later? Or is that a load bearing beam that if I move it, my house of cards will fall down? Okay. Again, quote from Hatsumi Sensei: students move on too soon. They want the next technique, but they haven't truly understood the first. Okay. So what is a Kihon? What I was introduced to was Kihon are non-negotiable things, like naname. Naname is diagonal. That just translates to diagonal in Japan, but we uh, use it to refer to angling, right? Timing, distancing, angling, that kind of thing, right? So it is a part of Tai Sabaki, correct Tai Sabaki, right? But naname, and here's something from way, way back in the day, before I even started training. Hatsumi Sensei told a story about how he would train with who a lot of people now know as Soke or Shihan or whatever. But back in the day, these were teenagers, early 20 somethings that were training with him. And he would demonstrate this moving to this particular angle, and they would move to a diagonal, and he would, no, naname. And so they would do an angle and no, naname. And finally, one of them had the balls to say, what is naname? I mean, it's an angle, it's a diagonal, but what do you mean when you say naname? And so Hatsumi Sensei had to define the word in the context of taijutsu. It's not just moving at any goddamn angle. But people do that because they believe that they're moving to the angle because they're just getting out of the way. Well, it's a good start. Okay. But, if a 3-year-old uses the word dink instead of drink, we kind of get the gist of what they mean. But if the person is 23 and they're still saying dink for drink, we think they're, a little off, probably a little bit more than off. Okay. So he had to define it. Okay? It is angled to the line of the attack while being profiled or otherwise aligned with either the attacker's core or the intended next target. There is a correct naname for every technique, but not just the kata, the technique as it's being applied in real time, because the thing that matters, right? The truth, the hon of the Kihon naname is the angle of the attacker's incoming punch, kick, grab, or weapon. How do I move to a proper angle, right? Based on the line of the attack, if I'm not watching the damn line of the attack, or I don't sense that or recognize what it is. And where should I be lined up? Okay. Here's a suggestion. Next time you're working with a kata that you're very familiar with, stop thinking about the next step, like what it's supposed to be. I step back to this, I do a counter strike, and then I hit him in the chest, and then stop thinking about it that way. And pick any. Let's say we're doing. Let's do Jumonji no kata works. Okay, so Jumonji no kata is only called Jumonji no kata because you start out in Jumonji. Okay, if anybody's noticed, your first move you go to Ichimonji, which is the foundation. Ichimonji is the Kihon. Okay, so in part, Jumonji no kata is teaching you first move is how to go from open, right, to closed. How to go from your targets are pointing at him. Yes, you've got your arms up to guard and whatnot, but you're going to go from open to closed. Okay, you're taking everything away. Okay, which means Ichimonji no Kamae and Ichimonji no kata comes first. Okay, so you get out of the way, and then you deliver a strike. Typically, it's a boshiken to his butsumetsu. Okay, or you could hit godin, right? So any one of the points along the diaphragm, floating ribs, depending on whether you're doing koshijutsu or koppujutsu, they could vary, right? Organs, whatever. Okay, this way, or butsumetsu. And again, depending on the lineage, butsumetsu could just be the floating rib, or it could be this whole line of nodes and ribs that you can flex and all that kind of stuff all the way down. Again, depending on the lineage. But either way, right? I shift out of the way, uke nagashi, deliver this shot. Okay. We're going to ignore the backing out. We're going to ignore the rest of the kata. Okay. My body is supposed to be lined up in an Ichimonji like a battering ram so that I can deliver the strike with my legs, not my arm and shoulder. So again, for those of you on audio only, I'm demonstrating this quickly just from the torso up, right? It's counter striking or uke nagashi and then dropping the arm into Ichimonji and pushing my lead knee forward to drive that boshikan, shikakan, whatever you're hitting with, into the target. Okay. As a battering ram. Okay. Are there videos from earlier in the day where Hatsumi Sensei looks like he's just crashing and bashing with these hard blocks or whatever people call them, right? And then a big old arm extension. Yes, of course. Okay. There's lots of reasons those videos were created the way they were. One of which was to continue to hide the art. Another big one was to, as a marketing device, to recruit lots of people to ninjutsu because it looked like a powerful, badass martial art. And it is, but the way those techniques are demonstrated are anything but invisible. Okay. So, but the question is, if I am supposed to be in Ichimonji, where I could simply shift my hips forward, my knee moving toward him because I'm pointing at his core, right? Without moving my arm, without moving my shoulder, whatever. What must the correct naname be against? Well, let's start with ski, right? Because it has to be lined up with him so that it's easy for me to hit it. Minimum movement, just the legs, locking down the wrist, elbow, and shoulder to punch with the body, right? Anything else requires me to reposition hand, arm, shoulder, torso to come back in from over here to come back in to hit over here. He's in motion. Okay, this is not a static, whack-a-mole game. Okay, so what angle? Okay. Well, it's going to depend on the height, width, right? Um, build of that person, because I have to find Butsumetsu. I have to line up with Butsumetsu. Okay. So next time we're working the techniques, reverse engineer them. Okay. So start with a follow-up move. Like ignore the first the things that are leading up to that, right? Pick a move within the kata. Okay. So what do I have to do before that to hit that mark? What do I have to do before that one so that the next one fits that and the next one? Okay. One of the biggest problems that a lot of students have, I had it as well, right? Is they like Henka because Henka gives them a way out, right? Henka gives them a way to cover up shitty taijutsu. They can't hit the ideal, so Henka's their safety net, which is fine, except that if we're always doing variation and we can't do the hon, the Kihon, then we're always going to be what? We're always going to be troubleshooting. We're always going to be slapping a band-aid on it. We're always going to be putting out the fire that we started. Okay. So it's just another way to look at these things, right? But what's the Kihon, right? What's the principle? And then what training, what understanding, what training, what mindset, what focus, what should I be looking at? What should I be looking for? Those kind of things, right? Are needed to be able to hit my mark. I jumped to Christianity for a moment. Everybody's heard the word sin, right? S-I-N, sin, not sen. That's Japanese for initiate, right? Sin. Okay. Translation of sin. Oh, he did something bad, something evil. No. Sin is an old archer's term. It means to miss your mark. Okay. So if we go to that statement of the Bible, which is found in Romans, by the way, which is an entire book on how to amass an army, which is pretty odd for a religious sect. But anyway, the phrase is what? The wages of sin are death. Right? Yeah. The consequences, the effect, cause and effect, the karma of continually missing your mark is you're going to die. Okay? You got to get them before they get you. So in this case, maybe it's not death. Maybe it's just have to work 3 times harder, or you have to hit him more often, or it's going to take you longer to shut this situation down. But we're all used to that because we're used to watching MMA or boxing or wrestling or taekwondo matches or whatever, and they've got 2-minute rounds, 5-minute rounds, multiple of those and whatnot. Because we're supposed to be able to accomplish any given engagement in 10 seconds or less, 4 moves or less. Look at your kata. If it goes beyond that, it's because you knocked the person away. The kata is showing that you knocked them away, or whatever you did to them, they recovered quickly and they're coming back. So it's actually a second engagement off of something that he neutralized. Right? It was a what if. Right? Being able to look at your kata and be able to see what kind of fight situation that thing is conveying and giving you a potential answer for. But there's a lot of things that aren't written in the scrolls. So Kihon are things that are non-negotiable. And when it comes to Kihon Gata, right, these very minimal action type skills, Ichimonji, Jimonji, Hitsuno Gata, any of the locks, holds, or throws, Musha Dori, Ganseki Nage, Muso Dori, Omote Gyaku, Ure Gyaku, all these kind of things, right? They show up in the kata over and over and over and over and over again. That must tell us something, right? That we have to know these things so freaking well that we can whip one out as soon as we recognize that things are happening. They have to be so ingrained in subconscious, unconscious, which is to say muscle memory, right? And we have to stop thinking our way through things. I have a quote from Takuma Sensei that'll be coming up here pretty soon, but um, uh, let's just stay with Ichimonji at the moment. Okay. So anyway, actually, before I jump into that one, again, I'm always remiss in doing this, but don't forget to like, subscribe, all that kind of stuff. Help other people find things. And besides that, if you do it, then YouTube or Facebook or whatever is more likely to give you heads up when I put other things out. Let me jump back over here screen wise. James, questions, comments? I see I put some people to sleep, or they went off to watch samurai cat videos, or there's speaking of Christianity, there's a phrase in Christianity or in the Bible, right? That many are called and few are chosen. Many are called, but few are chosen. Do you know that phrase? Yeah. That's not just a Christian thing. That's not just there's something out there that's going to choose me. Right? The lessons are there. Right? We tend to self-select, right, by determining what it is that we're going to follow or go along with, or how deeply we're going to go with something. Okay, our own ego does the selecting, because for most people, ego has determined itself God anyway. That's where judgment and all that kind of crap comes from. Anyway, what do we got? Questions, comments? Sensei, you're full of shit.
The only thing came in was Dave said anarchists wouldn't be able to survive actual anarchy.
And again, this goes for any polarized thing, whether it's politics, who's on what side of the aisle, whatever. The biggest thing that people need to get over is this one-sidedness kind of thing. If I just use the phrase, the terms conservative and liberal, they both need each other. They both hate that I just said that, but they both need each other. Because if you let the conservative side go too far, you end up with too many rules, too much structure, that kind of thing, right? So the liberals allow for growth and change, but too much on that side, and it'll run amok, right? And then you have nothing. You have no structure. You have nothing that's kind of holding things in, which is why the mandala, right? Again, these are things that I learned through this art and through Mikyo and whatnot, not and by watching, by applying the lessons and the skills and the exercises. The mandala looks the way it does because it's showing opposites, but you don't have the center. You don't have neutral. You don't have this. The center is made up of all of those four quadrants equally balanced. Okay? Shikin Haramitsu Daikomyo. We use that phrase to open and close classes. Okay, and I know there's a Shinto-based translation that's in the Tenchijin Uraku no Maki, and how it's related to this big. It looks like a mop-ish kind of thing that's shaken for purification in certain Shinto rituals and whatnot. But Shikin Haramitsu Daikomyo is also a very Mikyo kind of thing as well, and it matches up on the Taizokai mandala. Okay, Shikin and Haramitsu are opposite sides, right? If you look at the Taizokai mandala, that's the one with the 8-petaled lotus in the middle, big guy in the middle, and then it just kind of looks like rectangular sections. That's actually concentric circles, by the way, not the one with the 9 panels. So if we're looking at the mandala, okay, normally when you're practicing, and this is where people get things wrong, when you're practicing from the perspective of looking out from the mandala. You're in a place of enlightenment looking out at the world. But sometimes when you're exploring it and you're studying, you have to remember that it's a mirror view, right? So if I'm looking at it, then again, Taizokai mandala, around that 8-petaled lotus, there is a box. Okay. If you look very, very closely at it, it's actually 5 boxes that are right up against each other. Each square is a different color. They're the 5 colors of the 5 realms. Okay. So, but the left and right sides of the box create our longitudinal lines, okay, or barriers. Okay. So what you end up with is 3 equal sections. Okay. You have 1 to your right, right? That would be my right, your left now. 1 to your left, my left, your right. Anyway, and 1 right in the center. Okay. So if I'm looking at it, I'm going to now reverse my hand so that you see what I say I'm seeing. Okay. If when I'm looking at it, if I look at the right side that I'm looking at is actually the left side of the mandala. Sorry. Okay. That side is shikin. That is knowledge, intellect, book knowledge. Okay. The things that you can study. The other side of center, the other edge, right? That segment is Haramitsu. That's the realm of compassion, the realm of experience, the realm of street smarts. Okay. I just kind of figured it out. Okay. The center is enlightenment, Daikomyo, the great cosmic light. Right. So the center is what it is based on the relationship of the 2 outer flanks. Okay. When I can see, I'm looking at you. When I can explain scientifically based on the principles, concepts, universal truths, and whatnot, right? How this thing I can do works, and I can walk the talk, right? A lot of people can explain all this stuff, and a lot of people can do it, but they don't really know how it's kind of put together. Okay. So when those 2 are the same, they're equal about any given thing, any given technique, any given kamae, any given part of your life, then we are enlightened about that thing. Now, the Kongokai looks at it from a different perspective because it's a process to get there. But either way, all right. So, anything else, James? Before I no.
Terrence said, where was it? You had previously mentioned that Kihon points to 2 things. 1, if I don't know the principles or concepts, our techniques will collapse when pressure is applied. Did you already state number 2? Question.
Okay. So, if I don't know the principles and concepts that make our stuff work, the reason, the why that things are built the way they are, right? Why does Kosei look like it does? Why does Ichimonji or Seigan look the way they do? Why, right? Why do I enter at a certain point in his bent arm to catch the point of the elbow? Or why am I going after the point of the elbow? Can't I just like wrap and lock his arm up and then just punch him in the face? Right? Why is Mushadori, right? If I don't understand the principles and concepts, then chances of me developing something that's based on universal truths and not a belief system that may work for me for a while, but the right conditions come along, okay, it's going to break it down. So that's one. That's the Hon side, right? I have to know what the principles and concepts are that I'm supposed to. And this is the thing, right? We're not supposed to be doing these things, right? We don't do Kihon. We train until we are the Kihon. Right? You don't. When was the last time you thought about chewing your food when you were eating something? Unless it was a meditation exercise where I had you focus on chewing the food and the texture and how the temperature of the food changes, or carbohydrates break down and the saliva is doing its thing and it's turning things into simple sugars. So no, okay, right. We don't think about it, right? Um, okay, so but if the way I walk, I mean, walking is one of those things where it's experiential, right? But there's a lot of people that are tearing their bodies apart because of the way they do it, or when they step back into Kamae, right? Their leg is not in a proper alignment between the hip, the knee, and the ankle. And one of these days, right? I mean, I've had students go, well, it hasn't broken yet, so chances are it's not going to break. Really? Interesting. All right. I don't think, James, you were in class the other day for this, but there was a class I was doing, and I pointed out this little thing that's on the side of your knee joint called a meniscus. And its job is to keep your knee from doing what James's knee did one time, right? They can be torn, they can just rip right out, whatever, okay? It's a crucial piece. It is a keyhole for the knee structure, okay? Keeps your knee moving this way like a hinge joint and not shifting freaking laterally, okay? But often people will move back into Kamae where their knee, their hip to knee to ankle doesn't go straight. And I don't mean like it's bent because you've got bent knees. I mean it's like bowed to the inside, right? And I understand that piece, most people don't even know that piece is there, but they don't understand that piece is not designed for that kind of pressure. Right? And I understand it didn't the first time, it didn't the 15th time, it didn't the 500th time, but 501 could be the time it goes, you know what, screw you, I'm done. And then your knee slides in the wrong direction. And then you go to the doctor and the doctor goes, what'd you do? I didn't do anything. I just took a step. Did the same thing I always do. Oh, okay. That's called the proverbial straw that broke the camel's back. It wasn't a big ass piece of straw that you dropped on the camel's back and it broke its spine. It was all the straw before it, and it's the one that does it. Right? So, wholeness, the principles and concepts, the closer we can get, and this is the Shizen concept, right? Nature, natural, ninpo ikan, the way of the ninja is the way of the universe, the way of the ninja is the way of nature, or is the natural way, or is the way of truth, okay? Ninpo ikan, right? So what we're talking about is aligning ourselves with natural law, gravity, inertia, how things are and how they work, regardless of whether we like it or not. It's the way things are. We can go against it all we want, but we're going to wear ourselves out. Okay? So there's all these things that we have in this art that keep pointing back to this thing, that the closer we can get to aligning ourselves with the way things naturally work, based on universal law, based on natural truth, whatever, principles, concepts, those kind of things, right? The more power we're going to have, the easier we can get things done, all that, right? So that's one side. The other side is doing the work, doing the training, building things in a way that are in accordance with those things. So they go together. Okay. Again, just like I talked about earlier, if we've got too much of one thing, you can have all the woo-woo knowledge about natural law all you want, but if you're not mindful of how you move, or you're just making shit up because, well, that's the way I do it. Okay, it'll probably work ish for long enough until a condition comes along that you're not going to do. Right? Some of you have heard me say this in class, where people want to change their taijutsu to be more like the way people fight today. Well, people fight today more like they're in a Jumonji, so I'm just going to do it like that. Okay. You can do whatever you want. Okay. But do we know the history of how, like, why this developed this way? These things developed during a time when everybody fucking wore weapons, and the chances of you being attacked by somebody with a weapon, whether you had one or not, was very, very great. Okay. Sengoku Jidai Warring States period and before, right? It was just, there was a reason, right? It maximized armor, all kinds of things, right? But going into early, middle Edo period, a little bit later than that, and just continuing on to the present day, even Japanese fighters today don't fight like they used to back in the day, because the first thing that went was the proliferation of weapons. They either fell out of style, fell out, favor. There were laws regulating who could, who couldn't, and the more things changed, the more the fighting style went from profiled on to nose, toe to toe. Why? Well, because you didn't have to worry about being perforated. You could trade shots. So my contention, my premise today is that we should continue to be fighting like the original ways, regardless of what everybody else is doing. Not just because it screws them up and they have to figure things out on the fly, which is a huge benefit. Not just because it makes it harder for them to hit targets that will actually shut us down. It does, right? But because, and Hatsumi Sensei's mentioned this, because anything is possible in a violent situation, one of those is that weapons can come out at any moment. And if I'm fighting nose to nose, toe to toe, like everybody else does, and that's what I'm good at, it's going to be harder for me to adapt to the sudden appearance of a weapon than it is for somebody who always trains as though a weapon is present or a weapon could become present at any moment. This guy, right? I mean, Ichimonji, for those of you who are in audio only, right? This guy doesn't have to change very much. They're still going to adapt to the weapon, but their core, the stuff that's in muscle memory, their Kihon is already based on dealing with weapons. Little to no change is going to be required. This guy, street fighter guy, boxer guy, whatever, is going to get perforated really fucking fast. That person is going to have a harder time adapting to a weapon. And if we're focusing from a perspective where weapons are reality and it's about survival, multiple attackers and a battlefield, right? We're going to be watching for things. And so when one comes to bear, right, my mindset is, oh, well, this just got interesting. Okay. Right. Because the principles just shift a little bit to the Mutodori realm, right? Which is just a couple of extra principles that I have to be mindful of because I'm dealing with a weapon that are not, they're overlaid on top of core taijutsu. Right. So that's the surprise is minimal. Banpen Fukyo, no surprises for the ninja. The reason for that is because of the way we prepare ourselves, how we focus, what we focus on, right? The reality we're in tune with. But the guy who made the assumption that all fights are fist fights and this is how you fight, can you imagine? Maybe some of you already can. The shock value and the surprise that's going to happen if a knife suddenly comes out or a gun suddenly comes out, or this guy picks up a fucking hammer or a chair, or okay? Everything changes. And see, that's where Everybody's got their belief system until the situation isn't solvable with that belief system or with the tools in that toolbox. Kihon are the essential non-negotiable things that come up again and again, and or cannot be forgotten, cannot be overlooked. I mean, you can do whatever you want as a human being. As an adult human being, shit. Right? However, if you do, you're literally risking your life. Okay? So, Kihon, I understand they use the word basics, but we're talking about something that, like, is the alphabet. Without it, you can't make words, sentences. You can't write a book. You can't write a note to your family, whatever. Okay. Knowing an alphabet that doesn't match the receiver, they can't read it. I had somebody in Japan who was asking for directions, and their English was okay, but I wasn't quite sure about this one little section or whatever. And so they said, "Oh, would you like for me to write it down?" "Oh, yes, please." Right? Well, they wrote it out in Japanese. It did me absolutely no good because I could pick out a couple of things, but it made it no clearer. I said thank you and went out and did my best to sort things out. Right. So Kihon, like Kihon no Kihon are the letters of the alphabet. Kihon is your vocabulary, it's your words. And knowing how to string them together to create communication, right? And your ability to do that is in direct relationship to how well you can communicate at different levels with different people in different circumstances. And where that runs out, you say things like, I don't know how to explain it. Well, you say that a lot, not you, but I'm thinking about somebody who says that a lot in my life. You say that a lot about similar situations. So perhaps it might be helpful to, at some point, stop, think about at least how to explain it to get somebody closer than just stumble over a couple of unintelligible sounds and then say, I don't know how to explain it. Well, unless your eyeballs have a recording device behind it that you can pop something out and play it for me, then there's no point in telling me stories or explaining things to me or sharing experiences that you can't explain. That's wasted time and effort. Enlightenment is knowing that. Okay. Intelligence is knowing how the engine in your car works and how to fix it. Okay. Wisdom, enlightenment, is knowing that explaining that to a 5-year-old the way you would explain it to somebody that you're actually trying to convey the knowledge to is a huge waste of breath. Okay. There's just things in there that kind of move around, and when the gas goes in, it kind of blows up and it moves things. When you get a little bit older, I show you how that works, okay? Or how about if we bring up a video on YouTube that you can watch it happen, but it's really complicated, but you can at least see how it's working. How's that? Cool. Awesome. Huh? So, anyway, anything else, James?
No, sir.
Okay, cool. All right, so let's take a look at Ichimonji no Kamae. Okay, Ichimonji no Kamae. The way I want to explain this at the moment, okay, 3 levels. This is like the shuhari kind of idea, right? But we're going to base this on a quote, something Hatsumi Sensei said in a class when I was white belt, very early 9th Q, 8th Q, something like that. Okay. If you cannot do Ichimonji no Kamae, you cannot do Taijutsu. He didn't even say Ichimonji no Kata. He Said, if you cannot do Ichimonji no Kamae, you cannot do Taijutsu. He also followed that up with, if you cannot do Yokoruki, you can't do Henka. All that. What the hell are you talking about, man? Ichimonji no Kamae? I can do Yokoruki. I've been doing Henka. Just because you did something different because the original thing wasn't working doesn't make it a Henka. Henka, an actual Henka, still executes or still works with the same principles and concepts, the same strategy, produces the same outcome as the original kata. A Henka, a true Henka of any kata, keeps the kata's name. Otherwise, it's something else. Does that make it wrong? No, it's just not a Henka. It's something else. If we don't know what that something else is, there's a gap. Okay. So I have been teaching this for a long time to students very early on. James, which class? I don't know if you can remember that far back. Probably within the first class or three, when we covered Ichimonji no Kamae, and I said that Ichimonji no Kamae was the perfect embodiment of the three primary keys of self-defense. Do you remember that? Okay. What are the three primary keys of self-defense? Distance, right? If you can't reach me, can't hurt me, right? Removing targets. I want to remove as many targets from his access as possible, right? And I want to cover that which I cannot remove. Okay? So from a strategy standpoint, right, the shape itself moves my targets as far away from him as possible and creates some barriers. We'll be back to the barriers, but moves my body away. 70% of my weight in Seigan, general Ichimonji, is on my rear leg. Okay. I'm profiling my body, which removes almost all of my life-sustaining systems, including femoral arteries in the arms, all that kind of stuff, right? Away from his easy access. And then that which I cannot remove, brain bucket, neck, those kind of things, I cover. Right? So as a shape, there are these three strategic keys: distance, removal, and protection. Ichimonji no kata, as neutralization, actually as the kata itself, the kata teaches how to use Ichimonji in an ideal, right? Or as an ideal. Yes, it's a basic example. Yes, it's a fundamental. Yes, it's an introductory lesson to a student, but it's also a master's ideal. Okay? And so what we're doing is neutralizing the force of his incoming attack, right? Rendering it moot. Kazushi, breaking his balance mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. The more in the same instant, the better. And a decisive response against an off button to stop this as quickly as possible. Okay? And from a higher level, right, it is a position of zanshin, right, residual awareness, right? It's always on before, during, and after. Minimum movement, so zanshin and minimum movement to produce maximum control. It is a position from which I have to do very little to control way more. Okay? That's way deeper than just believing that if I take up a form, Ichimonji no stance, then I've got it. So there's 3 places anywhere in there to start. If you cannot do Ichimonji no Kamae, if you can't do Ichimonji no Kamae, you can't do Ichimonji no kata, because Ichimonji no kata maintains Ichimonji no Kamae the entire time. Okay? Those transition points, yeah. There's a reflection of Jumonji and Hicho, because when you're stepping, you're in Hicho. When you're changing sides, you're in Jumonji, right? Okay. So you're attacking from behind a guard. But in Gyokoryu, Ichimonji, Jumonji, and Hicho are the Sun, then Kamae. They're 3 reflections or 3 aspects of the same Kamae. Okay. So how deep do we want to go? Okay. The higher we go, we start looking at things like the way I'm using my eyes, or how am I using Ichimonji no Kamae? Am I using Ichimonji no Kamae from the perspective of Kokoro no Kamae, right? It's a Kamae of the heart, right? So I'm defensive, I'm controlling, that kind of thing, right? And which one am I doing, right? Am I using it from the perspective of Kyojutsu Tenkan? So I'm doing Ichimonji because I want him to think that I'm afraid, or I want him to think that that he has more control than he does, those kind of things, right? Or am I using Ichimonji no Kamae from a kind of a hey-ho, from a strategic standpoint, where I'm matching it to his strengths? So I'm using it as not just a barricade, but a manipulator. Okay, where I'm either taking away his ability to do what he does well, or I'm using it to let him do what he does well, because he doesn't realize that I know his stuff. Okay. And which form of Ichimonji we're doing. Okay. Because my students get 3 different reflections from the 3 primary striking arts within the 9, right? Kotoryu, Gyokoryu, and Kukushinryu, right? So I've got Seigan, this one that everybody learns is Ichimonji, this big, long archer's position kind of thing. Got Gyoko Ichimonji no Kamae, right? And then we have Doko no Kamae, okay? At a certain point in training, students learn them as low Ichimonji, which is the Gyoko Ichimonji no Kamae, mid Ichimonji, which is the Seigan no Kamae, and high Ichimonji, which is the Doko no Kamae. I'm going to face the screen. I apologize, those of you on audio only. You're going to have to put up with a description here, okay? Or just, if you know those 3 Kamae, get into a mirror, or don't get in the mirror, right? That's probably going to hurt. Face a mirror, right? And take up Seigan no Kamae, Ichimonji no Kamae, Doko no Kamae, and transition between them. And watch the windows of opportunity that the attacker would have change. And then if you add in other Kamae, what you're watching from this particular perspective is how to open and close certain windows that you're willing to let the bird fly in. We don't leave them open haphazardly. So just because we can take up a Kamae doesn't mean that we know how to use it. We don't know how it connects with other ones. Huh? Of course, if you do, then you're way ahead of the crowd. Okay? So, but Ichimonji no Kamae is a Kihon. Okay? It is a Kihon. We should not have to think about where our foot goes. We should not have to think about weight distribution. We should not have to think about where the hand goes and why it's there. We should not have to think about, at a certain level, we should not have to think about when that is the best freaking answer against this guy, or it's the worst freaking answer. Because Ichimonji, as in Seigan, sucks against somebody who throws hook punches and haymakers, or Taekwondo style kicking, because anything that's circular, right? Especially if the guy's taller, me turning profile does not remove my life-sustaining systems from his easy access. Not in that Kamae anyway. because he can still kick me in the spine or kick me in the sternum or the xiphoid process and puncture my heart and those kind of things. Okay, but to study at that level, we have to study other people's Kihon, what they get really good at. Right. All right. Moving along here. Let's see. Well, I've inserted a couple of like shameless plugs here. So over the weekend, and it went okay, I guess. I introduced a Kickstarter program, a ninjutsu Kickstarter program. It's a 7-day foundational kind of setup thing to set up somebody for long-term success. And it's both for people that are brand new, that I've always wanted to do this stuff, and for people that are returning, because what I found is that, again, most people drift into kata collector mode, and the reason that their training is inconsistent, hit and miss, and when I say hit and miss, it could be train today, not for 3 days, train again, not for 5 days, train again, train tomorrow, train twice tomorrow because I got to make up for it, not train for a month, or not train for, I don't know, 18 years or whatever, is because there are either perceived impediments or the mindset's not right. And so while there is some physical training, and I just added some extras to this, this program is really designed. There's like the average class is 2 hours long, so it's not insubstantial. It's not just a collection of techniques I'm throwing at people. Okay, the very first session is not just an overview of the whole thing. It helps to solidify the why we're doing it, and to recognize that if the why is insubstantial, then the quitting will come faster. Okay. And then it goes on from there. One of the sessions, one of the classes is in how to set up a training area, even if you have no space to train. And it also includes setting things up in a way that you are surrounded by symbols of both your why and the ideal that we're aiming for. Okay? We're feng shuiing our space. Okay? And that means even if somebody lives in a friggin' one-room apartment, okay, we can make space to train. Okay, so how to build our own dojo, that kind of thing. So there's this whole thing, right? And again, it was originally done as a 5-day challenge way back, 2020 maybe, 2021, something like that. But it grew into a 7-day kind of thing anyway, and folks were on and jazzed, and a bunch of those people became long distance students, and it was really, really cool. So I just decided to kind of repurpose it. But anyway, that's still available. James, I don't know if you can pop that in there. It's onlineninjaacademy.com/. I made the URLs really simple. Start-ninjutsu. How about that? But I'm adding a whole bunch of extra things to it. One of which is a training tracker that expands on a question that I ask at the end of every single class that I have, but allows someone to come out of a training or a practice session and log what they did, how they did it, where the problems were, that kind of thing, and some very, very important key prompts that allow us to be more objective in our recognition of progress and less subjective, and to be able to a really large degree, answer the question, what do I need to work on? Okay. And it will take folks deeper into these things. Yeah. So anyway, if you're interested, it's a do-it-yourselfer kind of thing, unless you send in email questions or something like that. Right? You can tell me you're doing it, whether you are or not. You can not talk to me, but 4 months from now, you'll mention something and I'll go, wow, shit, took that way far. Okay, that being said, any questions on anything up to this point, James?
No, sir.
All right. So next, the kata illusion. Okay. I made a reference of a delivery truck and how the Kamae and or the kata or whatever are more like delivery trucks. Hatsumi Sensei, there's quotes that people like to share all over the internet. There's one floating around where Hatsumi Sensei says that the kata is not the lesson in and of itself. It only points to where you need to begin. Something like that, right? So the analogy that I came up with a bunch of years ago was these things are like road signs that help you navigate and point in certain directions. But they're more like a delivery truck. Okay. All of my inner circle students, Shinobi Kai and whatnot, should know about these things, right? They're down there in your download member dashboard area and stuff. They're probably right, James. They're probably in that section right below where it says member dashboard, and then it says here are your resources with some links, and then it goes into the techniques and skills. So it's probably in that area that people just like jump right over, unless they're just downloading their student workbook. Would you agree? Okay. So there's like there's a Kamae worksheet that has 10 points for every Kamae. That's a basic start for students. There's also one that is a progress and development chart that is 3 stages: basic, intermediate, and advanced, also known as mechanics, dynamics, and staging. And in each one of those, there's 3 areas of primary study. Okay. So in mechanics, Kamae, body movement, and striking. Okay. So while there's more questions than this, right? One question might be, what does your Kamae teach you? Okay? I know I just went into a whole bunch on Ichimonji, but just in general, what 3 critical base level skills, non-negotiables, all of your Kamae combined, all of them teach these basic 3, and then you can move on. Footwork's not one of them, by the way. However, there is something in there that allows for effective and efficient footwork. It's not the same because body movement is footwork or rolling or leaping or break falls. Right? So, and then striking. What does striking teach? So there's those things in there, right? And then same thing, dynamics is senundo, which is a linear repetition exercise, which is pretty much Kamae to Kamae transition, because the dynamic stage is combining your basic elements, Kamae, body movement, and striking together. Okay. So senundo is linear transition. Anundo is circular repetition, but it's a defense to offense or offense to defense transition. And then Kihon gata. So what is each one of those teaching? You get the idea, right? I know I'm just not the karate guy down the street. Anyway, I just feel really grateful that I had the teachers that I had, but I still had to do the work, right? So anyway, there's this analogy that I use, right, where if I were going to ask you, okay, so here's Ichimonji no kata, right? What lessons is Ichimonji no kata bringing? Well, we just did one, right? I just broke it down, 3 lessons each across 3 different areas of focus. Okay. So again, it's a metaphor, right? What's a metaphor? Well, something that comes before meta 5. Again, I share this on a regular basis. Okay. A kata is like a delivery truck. If we think about a delivery truck, right? We've bought something somewhere, or it's being moved from someplace. In this case, from teacher on. It's the lineage flow, right? Okay. But a delivery truck is how the furniture, or in this case, the lessons, arrive at your house. Okay. But they drive up with the truck, street side, driveway, yard, whatever, right? And then all the pieces are carried into the house to the appropriate room, set up for functionality, and used as needed based on context and situation. We would all agree with this, yes? Awesome. I could hear you across the void, right? We don't drive the damn delivery truck through the front door and park it in the living room and then climb in and out of the truck to sit in the furniture or to watch TV or whatever. It's not what it's there for. We have different processes. And just like kata, the delivery truck can only take you so far, brings the lessons to the door. We have to use a completely different method or methods to get the furniture off the truck, through the door, to the room it's supposed to be in, aligned properly. We have to have a plan. We have to have foresight, insight, right? Okay. But we don't drive it through the damn door and then park it in the living room or the bedroom or whatever the furniture is supposed to go to. Okay. Because the truck is not the furniture. Just like the kata is not the lesson. We learn the kata so we can learn the lessons that it's carrying. Okay. There's no difference. In concept, this is the same. Okay. The kata brings the lessons. Okay. But once it's delivered, again, you have to get inside, you have to use, you have to uncover, right? So in many cases, you have to unbox, unpack, get the little styrofoam peanuts out of the way, right? Yeah. You have to do the work to uncover it, to make it functional for you so that, and this is the important part that is missed with the Kihon. This is why Hatsumi Sensei said students move on too soon. We don't think about how we're going to use the couch when we decide we're going to go into the living room and play a video game or turn on the TV and binge watch Netflix. We just go flop down. We just go, right? Sometimes we want a chair. Sometimes we want the floor. Sometimes we want the couch. We don't have to think about the use. We don't have to think about how to sit down, how to position myself for comfort, lie down, position pillows. We just fucking do it because it's not something we do. That knowledge and ability is so much a part of who I am that I don't have to go through the 3-year-old lesson of what a pillow is for. Okay? So we go through this whole process. Kihon have to be worked again and again and again, not until we get them right, until we can't get them wrong. And beyond that, until we don't have to think about doing them. In the Tagagi Yoshinryu, there is a level of balance breaking that is above the highest level of being able to break somebody's balance physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, the whole thing, right? That highest level that Oryomo Takagi realized as he was putting all this stuff together was in the ability to break your own balance. And what I mean by that is you surprise yourself. Okay. Again, we'll keep this loop open for a little bit longer. I have a Takamatsu Sensei quote coming up that will point to this, right? But again, we keep working this stuff and we keep, right? But when the time is right, what do? Same thing Hatsumi Sensei has already said. You forget the kata. You throw them away. Okay. Well, I've always asked the question, how do you forget something you've never known? How do you throw away something you don't have? Okay. But the time I'm talking about is when you send the truck back out, you send it away. Well, what are we doing when we send the truck away? Well, we're breaking our attachment to this is called this. Its official way to do it is this. Really? Interesting. Okay. So Tagagi Yoshin and Gyokoryu and Kotoryu deliver Shuto the same way. Yeah, sometimes. But I just mentioned Jutai Jutsu, Koshi Jutsu, and Koppo Jutsu. So nope, they don't. Throw in Kukishinden. In essence, yes. In application, no. So But from a different level, some of you guys teach. It's a whole different way of sending the truck back out. Because if you're seeing a teacher do a technique, let's say the teacher is a fifth dan, and they're doing the technique like a white belt, well, I hope that they're teaching a white belt, because that's the delivery van with the lessons that white belt needs. If that fifth dan is still doing that technique like they did it as a white belt, then somebody hasn't been learning and progressing. They've been collecting. And just because you know how to do it doesn't mean you can use it when you absolutely need to do it. Okay. Again, Hatsumi says this quote, right? Kata merely indicate where you need to start. Okay. Isuka Sensei, I'm going to miss him a lot, would remind us all in the class, right? And first level of training, shoot level of training, right? Copy, preserve. Show you this, you duplicate this. Until you can all duplicate this and get it right, we're not moving on to the next level, the next lesson, the next part of this. Not the next kata, the next part of this. Because if you can't do the kata, you can't learn the lessons. Because the kata is a reflection of the principles and concepts, the hon that particular art, school, jutsu, whatever, is built upon. And it's a reflection of the science that art and that school is based on. Okay? Spring camp's coming up. We're doing Koto Ryu secrets. Okay? Not covering just the kata and whatnot. We're covering interception. We're covering breaking more than just his bones. We're covering situational and incident dominance. We're covering how to do things in a way that breaks his, not just his ability to fight, because you can break somebody's body to break their ability to fight, but just come back with some friends later. Okay. How do you break somebody's will to fight or to attack you or to ever want to come back? How do you do that without touching them? Koppojutsu. I understand. Bone breaking. Structure breaking. Right. Anyway, so let's see. Why techniques alone are not enough. This goes right back to collection versus comprehension. We can collect a whole bunch of techniques, but do we understand the techniques, and to what level? Do we understand what they're a reflection of? If the teacher says that all kata on the first level scroll of the Gyokoryu, of the Jodyaku no Maki, all kata point back to koku. They're all reflections of and point back to the essential nature of koku. Okay? Or if we're in Kotoryu Shoden no Maki, same thing. Jodyaku, Shoden, means the same thing. Do we understand? Can we see the sets? Because it's laid out differently. Not all kata point back to Yokuto. Right? So do we understand the? Let's say there's a packet of 4, but we typically just do 3 of them because I think 4 is overkill or redundant. We can do that some other time. Shonen no Maki in our mod 2, there is Tangeki, Kyogi, and Shiaku. In essence, they're the same strategy, even though they start the same way, defending against Uke Nagashi against 2 punches, 1, 2, and then, right? But do we understand that it's the same strategy, even though the form looks different? Do we understand that we're doing more than just attacking certain parts of his body to put him down, that we're actually controlling where his mind goes in the fight in any given moment, and how to control where his mind is and where it goes. So it's not just psyching somebody out. Right? That's just for that packet. Okay. Anyway, so why techniques aren't enough? Well, we can have a whole bunch of techniques, but it's no different than somebody who just fills a toolbox full of tools, right? So they have them because, well, you never know when you might need them, but they end up buying tools and shit that they have no idea how they work, right? Here's a story for you. A bunch of years ago, ex-wife of mine was a nurse at a hospital. At this point, she was not a trauma nurse, although she was on a floor that was like 1 or 2 steps down from like ICU. Okay, so patients could range anywhere from recovery to they've stepped down, but we need to watch because they could end up going back to ICU or SCU or whatever, right? And so anyway, it was a visitation weekend for me with my older kids. And so we were heading from where we live, the hour drive down this older road that eventually got renovated, rebuilt. And all of a sudden, the car in front of us, the car in front of us was this like a gray 4-door sedan. I can't remember the make and model, but either way, right in front of that was a tractor trailer. Okay. And this is back when now it's a 4-lane with a turning lane. Back then it was a 2-lane state route kind of thing. Right. And so all of a sudden, this car in front of us did a quick little wobble and then shot across the lane of traffic. And of course, I, hit it, started to slow down and whatnot. We kept an eye. This thing slides to a stop on the other shoulder, which is pretty much just gravel. Big cloud of smoke, big, dust. And we come to a stop. I drift a little bit, make sure there's no traffic. We shoot over because that was really odd. That was not just a drunken maneuver or whatever, right? But either way, right? We shoot over there, hop out, ex-federal cop, nurse, run up to the car, and the people inside are panicking. The passenger, an adult, there was two men in the front seats, driver and passenger side, and 2 teen boys in the back seat. Okay, found out later they were off to a Penn State football game. Never made it. Anyway, we get around there. The passenger still has his hands white knuckled on the steering wheel. Come to find out, he did the steering maneuver, right? Had to get control because when the other guy slumped, took the wheel, and like that's what shot it across the road. This guy slides into position because there's a river down this embankment on the other side. Anyway, so we get up there and the driver is already blue and can't breathe, right? Ex-wife grabs the handle for the seat, yanks this thing, drops this guy back, and this big hunk of fucking concrete looked like a triangle. It was about 6-7 inches thick and about that shape. So what are we looking at? 10 inches across the base, 8 inches give or take to the pinnacle. It just falls out, right? And there's a hole in the windshield right in front of this guy. Okay. And the passenger is yelling that this thing just suddenly just flew through the freaking windshield, right? Well, here, what ended up happening was because of the deterioration of the road, one of the tractor trailer's trailer tires kind of skimmed off the road, picked up a loose piece of concrete, and played trebuchet with it. Boom, shot it right through the windshield, right in this guy's throat, right into his throat. Like it didn't hit face, nothing, right into his throat, shut him down that quick, right? And so she pulls this thing back and ended up using a pen to create a trach or to open him up. because his chest was already crackling. That means air was going into his chest cavity, not into his lungs, right? So she opens him up, and this EMT comes up, right? Full freaking gear, right? Oxygen tank, all that kind of stuff, right? Has all this shit. And she's like, do you have this this mask or whatever? She needs a tube set and what? Really indignant. Well, yeah, of course I got it, right? And so she goes, okay, I need a number 3, right? He's like, pulls this thing out. It's not even out of the cellophane, right? All the sizes are still in place. The box is pristine, right? And he's shaking like a freaking leaf. So I don't know how many scenes he's been on, but Joe Cool was not cool and not ready. So he's floundering, can't open the damn thing, right? Finally, she just goes, give me the damn thing, right? Opens it up, gets what she needs, drops it on the ground. She's like, hey, motherfucker's brand new. She goes, we're trying to save a life here, okay? You have your oxygen? Yeah. So brings it over, wires it up and everything. And okay, crack it. Let's go. Let's go. Open it up. Nothing's happening. Nothing, right? She goes, is the tank full? Yeah, it's brand new. Did you crack the seal? What? So we have to crack the seal to let the stuff flow out of the pipes and whatnot. This guy, full gear, had all of his kata, had all of his tools. He himself was not prepared for that situation, even though he had all that shit. And 2, he didn't know how to use most of it. That's fucked up. Had she not been able to adapt on the fly, MacGyver style, and know his equipment better than he did, this guy would not have been calling us every year for about, I don't know, 4 or 5 years on Christmas Day to thank my ex-wife for him having extra Christmases. Because when he woke up in the hospital, when Lifeline showed up, the helicopter shows up, they fully expected that he would die on the way. And when he regained consciousness 2 days later, he called my ex-wife as soon as he got like his wits about him and all that kind of stuff. But when he was conscious and stuff, they must have been in passing or whatever, and they were keeping tabs on the guy. When he woke up, one of the pilot or crew came into his room and said, here, put a Post-it note in his hand or a note or whatever with our names on it, and said, you might want to call her and say thank you. Because by the time we got there, he'd have been dead. Okay. I know I'm drawing parallels, but this is no different. We cannot confuse collecting a bunch of shit with knowing how to use them outside of the dojo on the fly when the left brain doesn't have time to think. Okay. There's a difference between surface form versus deep understanding, deep transformation. So here's one of the lessons from Takuma Sensei that I've been alluding to. One must train until the body forgets the technique. Then, and only then, will the correct movement arise on its own. I'm not talking about somebody forgetting the technique because they don't practice consistently with the same technique often enough to, 1, not only not forget it, but to 2, not be able to get it wrong, but 3, to have the thing come out. I've told many stories about whipping a mushadori or an onikadaki or whatever on somebody under pressure when I was a cop, and that was that Takagi Yoshin surprise kind of thing. Like, I didn't think about any of it until after it was done, down, guys in cuffs, and I'm walking away thinking, holy fuck, how did I know how to do that? Because it wasn't even that I was watching myself do it. There was a sense of familiarity. I knew what I had. It was like walking down the street. Oh, there's the street that I need. He lives up this way. It's no different. Okay? Unless that's not what we're aiming for. If we're just aiming for some belts and to know some stuff and all that, then we don't need to go this deep. It's not necessary. Okay? And then let's see, where am I on this thing here? I think we're about to. Oh, okay. So we'll take another break here in just a second. So let me just wrap this little section up here with in Mikyo. Actually, it's across all Buddhism or whatever, Mahayana Buddhism. But in Mikyo, we have this teaching called the Heart Sutra. And what it's pointing to is not the heart, right? In this case, heart means the core of, okay? The essential core, the crux, right? The phrase is form is emptiness, emptiness is form. Well, that sounds like more of that backwards, inside out doublespeak. No. Form is what the emptiness looks like. The emptiness is the principles, the concepts, the universal laws, gravity, inertia, timing, flow, that kind of stuff, right? The kata is an example of those principles and concepts playing out a certain way. Emptiness is the form. Emptiness, these principles and concepts are the form. They're the thing that we need to get past what the kata look like and focus on the half a dozen principles and concepts that everything else is built on. Okay? Kata are templates, not cages. Kihon becomes you just like walking or feeding yourself. You've learned how to do it, and you've done it so much that I'm kind of hungry. You go to the refrigerator, you open it up, you find something, you open the wrapper, you plunk it in your mouth, you chew it, you go. But you don't think about any of those things, but maybe for an instant, but not the how, not the why is self-evident. I want to eat. Okay, great. If that, those little Baby Bell cheese that come in like the wax wrappers that have little paper that you peel out and you pop this thing out. There's little snack things. Okay. Yeah. Most people, if those things were kata, most people would eat them cheese and paper and all. Because, the wrapper says it's cheese. It's red, but it's cheese. Right? It's one thing to have it. It's another thing to know how to get at it and how to use it. We don't do Kihon. We become Kihon. We don't do walking. Just get the hell up and walk. We don't do breathing. We don't do eating. We eat. We don't do chewing. We chew. It's a part of eating. Kind of like naname being a part of taisabaki, right? Anyway, let's see what quote I have buried in here. Another one from Matsumi Sensei. Don't use a technique. Let it appear. That goes right along with that lesson, I think, from the Tagagi Yoshin for how to always have the right technique at the right time, the perfect technique at the right time, which is never to do a technique that's not already working. Okay? We recognize that something is happening, and we carry that. But that's not the same as just making shit up or just throwing things together. Okay. Now, for those who want to go deeper than that, then, we've got our inner circle and our Ninpo mastery programs and whatnot. So some of you guys you already know about this. You're in the Ninpo masterclass program. So Tuesday and Fridays, you sign in through Zoom and you're right there in our masterclasses, right? Our Shinobi Kai and Black Belt class and working on whatever the weekly theme is. So for those tomorrow, we are going to focus on a couple of Kihon Gata, and we're going to be drilling the hell out of what most people would say, uke nagash, and then you hit them, but we're not going to be doing the hitting. We're going to get really, really good at transitioning between neutralizing the force of his attack and Kazushi, but we're going to let him lead the dance. Okay? And then on Friday, we're going to focus on stringing Kihon together in an unbroken flow against whatever he's doing. And we're also going to work with starting a kata one way, and either the, well, in this case, the uke can change things midstream. Not always, because we need to keep people on alert, zanshin, and tuned in and focused, and not mesmerized by the technique, hypnotized by the technique. You know what that is, right? Okay, I do this, and then I do this, and then I do this, and then guess who's not paying attention to the world around them? Is there ever time to do that? Of course, when you start first freaking learning it. But if you're way up on the rank scale, it shouldn't take you more than 2 or 3 repetitions of a technique to get it, and then you can start focusing on the rest of it. Okay. But if you are interested in these other things, right, there's a, James, I don't know if you have access to it or not, the Calendly link, or you can just send an email to us. That's fine. What do we normally put in the subject line? Like call request or something like that? Just let me know what your training background is like, and chat about what your goals are. Even if these programs aren't right for you, I mean, we'll talk about the programs if you want to, but if you let me know where your sticking points are and things like that, if nothing else, you will walk away with some next steps for you that are tailored. Okay, so if you jump into the program, fantastic. If you don't, look, the reason I do all these freaking things for free and pay for the services is to help people get unstuck and to stop being caged by the same thing that is everybody else trapped. Okay. Many are called, few are chosen. Okay. Anyway, let's see. James, questions, comments, complaints? I think I've got one more little section here.
No, sir.
Well, so I either put him to sleep or we'll see. Oh, let's see. Okay, so speaking of Kihon, I just mentioned a couple of these things, right? So let's take a look at 3 phases of a Kihon gata. Okay, and I don't mean the moves. Like I'm doing uke nagash, and then I'm doing this thing, and then I'm striking his neck, and okay, 3 phases. Okay, all Kihon gata, most kata, unless the kata is depicting something where he recovers or neutralizes what you attempted to do and then comes back in again, right? Have 3 phases. Those phases are iri, iri, or entering, dori, catching, and there's not one good word for it, execution. Okay, so let's go back to Ichimonji no kata. He throws a punch, right? I know, uketsuki, whatever. Okay, comes in, right? I use taisabaki, naname, to drift so he misses, and I do uke nagash or some form of uke uchi, right? A receiving strike, receiving catch, that kind of thing, right? So that's nothing yet. That's not getting hit. That's not the Kihon gata. That is a Kihon no Kihon. Not getting hit. Moving to the right angle. Okay. That's not a gata. That's a waza. Okay. It's an action. Okay. What I want to do when I'm receiving this, or the uke and the gash, is I want to have zanshin going on. I want to have this discernment going on to know whether or not it is safe to enter without getting my teeth shoved down my throat or taking that long fuzzy nap. All right. So if I'm doing again the gosh, I'm doing more than just putting my arm there. I want to feel intent, action, movement, direction, those kind of things. Try to get away from doing it left, right. You ain't got time for that. Okay. if I'm doing uke-uchi, right? Did I open up the alley or knock that thing away? And he's in a condition where I can move in, okay? Entering without being stopped or inhibited, right? Or countered. See, we have other kata beyond Kihon in case he does something, okay? And then catching, okay? Catching. That doesn't mean that I'm catching mushadori, ganseki. That doesn't even mean that I'm necessarily putting my hands on him. What I'm doing is this is kuzushi. This is balance breaking. Okay, I have him in a condition where he can't go on the way he initially planned. He's stuck. He either stalled, hesitated, is busy missing, is stumbling. Right. I may have caught him. Right. But let's go back to Ichimonji no kata. Right. He throws a punch. Instead of punch and then I just kind of hang out until he delivers his strike, what if at the next level of training or upper intermediate, right, I throw the punch and reset to see what, maybe it was an exploratory punch, right? Next levels up that, okay? So he throws a punch, my uke is going to be out, back and out, right? Or back and out and back in, right? So uke nagashi, I want to ride that in, following him so he gets stuck. Okay? I want to catch him with his own movement. Now his brain's all caught up like, well, I got him, but shit, it's not right. Right. And then from there, I can do the execution. But for tomorrow night's class, I don't care about the execution because if you can't do these first two parts right, you get executed. Okay? The execution will have a whole different meaning. Okay. So we're going to spend time. Ichimonji no kata, Ichimonji no kata, Doko no Kamae, or Doko no kata. We've got, I know, Gyoko Ryu doesn't have, where's Doko no kata come from? They're examples. Okay. Not all the lineages have things that are called Kamae no kata, Kose no kata, Bobi no kata, whatever. Okay? They have other names, but I just simplified it because what it ultimately means is here's an example for using this kamae the way it's designed. Okay. So again, the key insight here is you can't finish what you didn't catch, and you can't catch what you didn't enter for. You can't enter for something that you don't feel or you don't recognize as an opening. What you end up doing is the same thing everybody else does. Just throwing shit back and forth and hoping that something lands. One of my teachers used to call that 2 6-year-olds slap fighting in a sandbox. You know, that kind of thing. My daughter Trinity does it way better than I do. Anyway, right? I mean, all this really goes back to that phrase that I borrowed earlier, right? Many are called, few are chosen. Right? So, I can't make anybody do anything, and I can't want higher levels for somebody or mastery or I can't want any part of this for anybody any more than they do. Ultimately, like running my school, running my consultancy, okay? Nobody, including anybody that I ever hire and pay, is ever going to be as invested in these things as I am. And this goes for our training and our skill level. Nobody can or will be as invested as you are. Okay? My teacher really wants me to get, well, see, I know what they want, but they want it for them because they don't want to be wasting their time, right? Or who knows, lots of people can become teachers for lots of different reasons. It's a whole different thing, right? So risking throwing this into a spiritual insight, okay, that whole many are called, few are chosen, okay. Again, we're in this case, we're not talking about some external force choosing, okay. This is because ego chooses not to look deeper, not to look broader, not to return to the beginning. You can't return to the beginning. You can return to lessons you got when you began, but you're not returning to the beginning. That's a big thing that stalls a lot of my students or potential students who keep telling me how much they want to get back into training. Stop using the goddamn word back. It's a huge inhibitor. You can't go back. Right? You can start again with certain lessons, but you're starting from like you learned them. So it's knocking the rust off, it's re-exploring them. But when it comes to Kihon, always coming back. Because every time we come back, we're bringing other stuff with us that we've already learned, and we're looking at it. We should be looking at it with fresh eyes. And besides that, we should be coming back again and again and again, because until it's in muscle memory and we don't have to think about doing it, we ain't got it. Okay. Mastery is not moving on, it's moving deeper. All right. So let's do a quick Q&A thing here, and then I'll outline what we're doing for the week quickly. And then we're going to call this another episode. So, James Hahn, Grand Poobah. Grand Poobah, the Loyal Order of Water Buffalo. Remember that? Flintstones. Anyway, all right. So, Yabba Dabba Douchebag. Anyway, what? It's been a day. Questions, comments?
No, nothing new has come in.
All right. Anybody learn anything? I don't know. Drop a heavy finger on one of the buttons on your keyboard so we just see a long string of, I don't know, J's or something. Is this helpful to anybody? If you're listening audio only, you're listening through one of the podcast services or whatever, by all means, shoot us an email, right? warriorc@warrior-concepts-online.com. So let me know if you picked up anything out of this. If you're getting any kind of, if I've taught on anything that helped you get some significant change or traction or whatever, let me know what it is. Okay? How is this helpful? Or are you just avoiding chores, or right? You're home from work and you really don't want to be talking to your significant other, or, whatever. I don't want to know about those things. Okay. But what are you getting out of this other than, I mean, I get showing up, lots of people go to church too, but you wouldn't know it the rest of the week. All right. Well, while we're waiting for those things to come in very quickly here, let's rest of the week. Okay. So I already talked about tomorrow, Tuesday's Inner Circle, Shinobi Kai Master's class. We're doing the entering and taking drills, those kind of things. For Wednesday, Whiteboard Wednesday, again, we're still on Kihon. Okay. My working theme at the moment is basics, but not beginner techniques. Okay. So we are going to be looking at 3 parts, 3 applications, and 3 phases. Oh, that'll be fun. And then Friday, that masterclass, so tomorrow's part 1, Friday's part 2. They actually go together. So Friday, like I said, we're going to be doing stringing Kihon together in an unbroken flow. But what we're really going to be doing is practicing being Kihon. Way too many people think about doing it, then do it, and then gauge whether or not it worked. It's a good thing we don't eat that way, isn't it? Okay. Did I hit my mouth on that one? I didn't feel like I chewed anything. There's a bunch of shit laying in front of me. Perhaps I need a bib and a high chair. Okay? There's nothing else in our freaking life that we do that way. Okay? Anyway. Did I give him enough time?
Well, Dave said, yes, we are here.
Wow, look at Dave speaking for everybody. Wow, you universal godlike being, you. See, told you. Daishian's a douchebag. Okay. Push people's buttons all the time. It's my yob. The force is strong in this one. All right, well, that's it. James, anything else? Anything I forgot? Spring camp is coming up. We're under 4 weeks. Email just went out, and I'll be doing some social posts and whatnot. So if you can't make it, you can't make it, right? Live or virtual or whatnot. The email just went out. The doors are open. If you want to pre-order the videos, that's going on. And I can stop holding my breath. The camp T-shirt, really cool T-shirt, is out. And while on the left breast it says Spring Camp 25, something like that, with our logo. On the back, we found this old, I think it's a hokusai artwork, line work of a warrior battling a tiger. Kotoryu, knocking down the tiger. And he's holding a scroll box, and it originally had something else on it. Well, I had it reworked, so now it says Kotoryu Kopujutsu, right? Cool, yeah. And what else does it have? It has the theme to the upper one corner, and then down at the bottom there is a really cool quote from Hatsumi Sensei, a really rare quote on the essence of Kopujutsu, right? That you're not just breaking bones. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge. Okay, there's more to it than that. Okay, but that's on there as well. So even if you just want another cool T-shirt, the link's in there for that. If you pre-order the videos, and I'm not going to keep this very long. If a bunch of people jump on this thing, I'm going to have to put a limit to it. Right now, if you do it, I'm including a post-camp live Zoom Q&A where both participants that were there and those give you plenty of time to watch the videos, a week or two, and then we'll do this thing so that folks can ask questions and get some maybe some confusion cleared up and whatnot. And James knows how these camps work. We always run out of time, so that'll be the time when I drop some extra nuggets and whatnot that we did not have the time to go into during camp itself. So if you're already signed up for camp and you're going to be there, virtual or live, you're already on the list for that. Anybody that pre-orders the videos, you'll get an invite to it as well. Whether or not you show up or you just get the recording, that's entirely up to you. But that's at least an hour and a half Q&A class, depending on how many people show up. It could go 2 hours. But either way, I think that's it. So, James, is that it? Questions, comments, complaints?
That's it.
All right. In that case, I will see everybody either Whiteboard Wednesday or in class this week. And if not, I'll see you next week on Warriors Whiteboard Wednesday. Get more of KUDEN Radio. Subscribe through your favorite podcasting site or join our clan of serious modern warriors at online